We have a special treat for the UConn women's faithful. Morgan Tuck will be with us on the Hoops Cap.
Let's get it. Yeah. UConn, baby. Home of the champions. Let's go.
Welcome into the Hoops Cap Pod. I am your host, Mark Zanetto. Thank you for making the Hoops Cap and Big East Energy part of your daily or weekly routine. We really appreciate all that you guys are doing by commenting, liking, subscribing, everything that goes with how a podcast garners attention. And listen, I don't take any of that stuff for granted. We absolutely love what we're doing here and what we're building. Today's a special podcast for me. One of the UConn greats and now the general manager of the Connecticut Sun will join us. Morgan Tuck is one of the most decorated winners in women's basketball history on the court. And now now is the youngest ever GM in the front office, a four-time NCAA champion at UConn and a WNBA title holder with the Seattle Storm. She was drafted third overall by the Connecticut Sun in 2016 and returned to the franchise in 2021, rising to become the general manager just last year with a unique perspective shaped by championships, injury history, USA basketball, and now roster building decisions. Morgan brings a rare full circle lens to the game. So I present to you Morgan. All right. As promised, Morgan Tuck, welcome to the Hoops Cap Pod on Big East Energy Network. Really appreciate you being here. How are you? Let's just start there. How's your morning?
Yeah, it's good. It's good, and I'm really excited about being here. And I love when I get to kind of relive the glory days about UConn and just the state of women's basketball. So really appreciate it. And today's been pretty good so far. Can't complain.
All right. So, what's it like? Let's kind of jump around here because you're the youngest GM in WNBA history. What's it like stepping into a WNBA after, in your playing days, playing in a system like UConn and then, getting drafted third overall? Like, what was that experience like just from that perspective? I can't imagine, how you must have felt like from a playing perspective coming from UConn, four-time national champion, and then going into the NBA third overall pick.
Yeah, it was super exciting, right? I think a lot of us that played in college, like that was our dream, right? To get drafted. And for me, it was like since third grade, I knew I wanted to be a WNBA player, like 100%. I knew that was what would me feel like I'm reaching my dream is if I get drafted. So I think that was the coolest part. And then to get drafted to Connecticut, right? Like we were at Mohegan where I was going to play, where I got drafted. So it was like really cool to be in front of the fans that were going to, honestly, we're kind of like UConn fans anyway, but they were there for the Sun, right? So I think that's what made it really cool. And my transition was I drove like 40 minutes from my apartment on campus to my new apartment to be a pro. So I had like such an easy transition and got to come in early. And I think the biggest difference though when we got there was we weren't as good, right? Like we lost a ton of games my rookie year. And, I know we were just talking about losses in college where it was like the end of the world if you lost. And when you become a pro and you lose, they're like, all right, well, we're going to dinner, right? Like we got to show up the next day. So it was like this kind of relaxed view of losing. And I just couldn't understand it. And I was super frustrated and I would get mad. We lost a lot. So I was mad a lot. And so eventually I had to realize like, okay, there's other ways to find some success, even if you're not getting the win. But that was tough. Like I would say in college, that's not an option, right? And in the pros, people lose a lot of games. So it's just kind of how it goes. But it was a challenge, right? You're kind of starting over as like you were a freshman in college. And then, but then at the same time, you're playing against players that you grew up watching and kind of idolized and wanted to be like, or those she was your goal that you wanted to reach. And now you're playing against her guarding around the court. So it was a really cool experience to be able to go from a lot of success in college to being a top pick, coming into the pros, and then getting to play against people that, I went to their high school games when I was a kid and really got to watch them. So it was really surreal becoming a pro.
All right. As I promised, I said I was going to jump back and forth between playing days, front office, the whole deal. So let's take you back to 2016. It's your last game at UConn, national championship game against Syracuse. What about that game do you remember the most? Because now unprecedented going for a fourth straight national championship. What was that pressure like?
Yeah, it's funny because I don't even know if we really felt the pressure because I think we put so much pressure on ourselves that we knew like this was our goal. So it's like obviously you don't want to like look too far ahead, but I feel like senior year we felt like, all right, if we do what we can do, we're going to be fine. And so I think we had that on ourselves of like we've done this every day, we've shown up, like this is another game, like we're not going to and the good part is like there was social media, but it wasn't like now with women's basketball on
Mm.
social media. So I think that helped too. Was like just it was like national TV, but not social, where it's like every day. But I think it was really on ourselves where we felt like it's up to us. Like if we want to do it, we can do it. And so I think for us, it was more of like, okay, we did what we're supposed to do. Because when you win the years before, you're like, well, it's a total failure if you don't win it your last year. Like that's really how we felt. And so it was kind of like we put the pressure on ourselves, but we knew that our coaches also helped us with that, right? They put a lot of pressure on us like every day in practice, or even if we won a game, it wasn't like, oh, okay, good job. It was like, yeah, but you didn't get this many rebounds or hit this shooting percent or whatever, like some small goal. So I think we were so used to like little goals or like, what's the really big picture about it and how we want to play. And so I think when we made it to the Final Four, we knew we had to play good, but we knew like, all right, this is ours. Like we're getting it. And I think we felt it was honestly more like exciting and fun, I would say, than it was pressure filled.
Yeah. And hey, you had a pretty good game that day. 19 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists, and a block. So, I think you did your part. It wasn't
Yeah.
you weren't riding anyone's coattails there. I really appreciate that. Look, you have had it's kind of rare to talk to someone again. Like there's not very many of many people alive. Let's put it that way, because you had unprecedented success on the men's side with the UCLA basketball and John Wooden days that have won 4 straight national championships. So what does that accomplishment mean to you when you look back and think about that perspective?
It means a lot. I think I know it's a great accomplishment, obviously, but I think when you're in it, it's kind of like, again, as I've gotten older and like out of playing, I think I've been able to reflect a little bit more and appreciate how good it was versus like when you're in it, it's just like you're normal, right? It's what you
Yeah.
do, it's what you're working toward. And to me, the best part was that I got to share it with, 2 other people that I got to know from when we were in high school days, going against each other and like all time matchups with Stewie and Mo Jefferson. And, for us to be able to we obviously all chose to go there, got to come in together and, became like sisters in a way. And then like you live together, you're together all the time. And then to achieve a lot of success, it really does bring you together. And I think that's like a bond and a connection that we'll always have. And to do it with them, I think is really cool, right? We're the only class that has been able to do that. But I think, yes, when you retire and you get out of the playing days and people like tell you how great you were or like how much you did it, like, of course it feels good, right? You're like, okay, maybe we were good, right? Like maybe we
Mhm.
did something a little bit special, but it's really, to me, the memories that I have with my teammates through that time is like the best part about it, right? Like we won a lot, but like we celebrated a lot and we had a ton of fun. So it was like those championships brought us and brought myself a lot of joy in life. So I think, it was a great accomplishment and, it was cool. I'm just glad I got to be a part of it.
Well, speaking of championships, you won a WNBA championship in Seattle. What stands out about that team and the differences between winning a WNBA championship and an NCAA title with UConn?
Yeah, I think there's a bit of a different feel. Obviously, a championship is a championship, but in college you live with your team all year, right? Like you're in
Mhm.
summer school, you have preseason, you get into the season, like it's a long process. And then you're with these people for like 4 years, 3 to 4 years, depending on the class. Whereas a pro was my first year going into Seattle. It was in COVID during the bubble season, right? So it was like such a weird year and like such a weird season. I mean, the good part though, and I think the coolest part, obviously I got to play with Stewie, right? She was there, but it was my first time getting to play with Sue Bird. And it was just such a cool experience to be able to play with one of the best who ever played. Obviously the UConn thing, but just like women's basketball and basketball in general, like she's a great to me. And it was really cool to get to learn from her kind of like hands on and get to see how she works and understands, as I think she was in like year 17, 18, 19, somewhere in there, and just to see like her dedication to the game, it was like, okay, I see why Sue Bird is Sue Bird, right? Like you could see it on a daily basis. And so I think when you get to be with people that are really great or that have had a lot of success in the pros, that's to me what made that championship really special too, is like it was a totally different experience. It was the only other team in the league that I got to play for, and we did it during the bubble when
Yeah.
nobody knew what was going on in life. And so it was a really cool experience. But it's definitely a different feel than when you've like feel like you've kind of gone through the trenches with the whole group and then you win like college, right? Like sometimes you don't even think you're going to make it through preseason in college and then you win the championship. So they're both amazing. And they're just, I think just the context of how much time you're with your teammates is what makes it a little bit different.
You mentioned the bubble and COVID and all of that crazy part of time.
Yeah.
I this is just a sidebar question because I didn't have this beforehand, but when you weren't playing basketball, what was something that you did to kind of like get through that? Because for me, like your social media will give you memories of like that time. My wife and I looked at this the other day, and she was just like, if that's not the most perfect COVID era video. And it was literally, this is pre-kids. We're literally sitting in our condo at the time. I think there was like a pizza box on the table. There's like crap everywhere because you just were like frustrated. You were always in your house. I couldn't even tell you what I did to kind of decompress. Like, what was that like for you playing a professional sport?
Yeah, I think, early, it was actually when COVID first hit, I was playing overseas in Turkey and was coming home, and I don't think we knew like what it was going to be. So I was just like, all right, I was ready to come home. I was tired of being overseas. So I was like, all right, great. Was a little excited. And then I think as we started getting close to the season and realizing, were we going to have a season? If we did, what was it going to look like? So I just tried to stay in shape, but it was so weird because like our strength coach at the time would like send us workouts, but we're like working out in our driveway, or like I bought a hoop from Walmart and like was in my parents' driveway, and trying to get workouts in with my dad. So it was really cool because it was like I hadn't done a workout with my dad in the driveway since I was like 10 or 11. So we were kind of like reliving the old days, and I'm like running laps in their like cul-de-sac, trying to get some cardio, stuff like that. And so I think it actually was really cool. Where like my grandma at the time, I lived home with my parents when I come back, and I would do workouts outside, and it was like my parents and my grandma and my sister would come. And it was like, to me, it was such a cool time where I got to spend way more time with my family than I had since I was in high school. Like when you go off to college, you're away. And then when you're a pro, you're W, then you play overseas. So to me, COVID was great in the sense that I got to spend a ton of time with my family that I hadn't had in a long time.
Yeah.
So I thought it was really cool. And but I think, as COVID got a little longer, right, it wanes a little. I think when we were in the bubble, it was nice first. We didn't have to travel, but I lived with some of my teammates. And so, when you're living, it's kind of like college again, right? You get to live with your teammates and you're like hanging out and don't have much to do. You can't go anywhere. So, I think we always try to find like game nights or board games or like listen to me, like random stuff that you just didn't really do with your friends anymore because you had to be in one place. So I think I tried as much as I could to just like connect, right? Like if it was my family when I was home, if it was my teammates when I was in the bubble, it was like, okay, let me find if I can hang out with other people. I felt like it gave me something maybe I missed when I was overseas or when I had to be away. So it was definitely the relationships and connections that kept me going.
All right, let's pivot back to UConn. That's great stuff, by the way. I think everybody has those moments, and so to hear your talk about what you went through at that time, I think it gives people some solace and some camaraderie there. As far as the coaching staff, I was fortunate enough. If I remember, I'll send you the video. I'll email it to you. I was at the Greensboro Coliseum this year when Geno tied the record. And I asked him a question around what's more impressive, his wins total or the fact that every time Chris Dailey took over for him, she won, that she was undefeated. And I'll send you that answer. He was very good with it. But as far as Geno and Chris are concerned, what can you say that we don't know? Like, as far as like what's like a little nugget you can give to our audience that maybe they don't know, whether it's something personal, whether it's something that they, motivated you on the court, spill the tea, so to speak, on the two of them and kind of their differences.
Yeah, I think, I don't know if it's like not known, but I really think they wouldn't be as good as they are without each other. Like they're really a perfect match and a perfect pair. And I think for anyone to work together for 40 years, they have to be. And I think, I don't think UConn would be what it is if it wasn't for both of them. They had to be in tandem, I think, to have the success. And obviously Coach of course, as the head coach, gets most of the credit and all that, which he deserves. But CD like is the one that makes it go like 100%. And I always think it's funny because they're very similar, but also very different. Where, coach is coach, but like CD is like the most type A person I've ever been around in my life. And I don't understand how she is as consistent and on top of things as she is. But that's her. And, I think the biggest thing that I always like about each of them, where CD is like I said, really consistent, right? She's on you about everything. It could be like your shoes, you're not tying your shoes fast enough, or you have the wrong headband, or the way you walked off the bus, she didn't like it, so you need to change it the next time, or like just like any little thing, right? And it's constant. It doesn't fade until you graduate. And then for coach, he's like way more chill. On the court, he gets a little crazy and does all that, but like he's way more chill and kind of carefree. Like if you had any issues, like he would be like, "Oh, like be fine, you're fine, don't worry about it." And CD's like the total opposite. But I think to me, the thing that makes them both very similar and really, really good at what they do, and why I think they're the best coaches in women's basketball, is they know how to read people extremely well, right? And they know how to hit the buttons the right way for the right person, but still treating everybody fair at the same time. And I think people always ask, like, what do they do that makes them so special? And I'm like, there's not like a special drill or like a special, it's just basketball, right? It's nothing I did that you kind of didn't do somewhere else at some point. But I think they know how to get their players to get to their best in a way, different ways, right? CD's a little more like naggy, kind of on you. Coach is a little more oversight, can be a little meaner, right? But they find the way to get you to realize that you have more in yourself, and they get all of us to feel that way. And I think that's why the team is so good. So they're both really funny. They're different, but they're also really, really great people. And even though I've graduated and gone, like they've created such a family feel that I can call either one of them at any time, and like they'll be available. They'll help me out if I need it. So like they're literally some of the best people that I got to be with.
No, it's great. Who's funnier, Geno or CD?
That's hard because like they're both funny in their own way. Like CD's like funny without trying to be, and coach, of course, he's gonna like crack a joke every 2 seconds. So I'm gonna give it to coach because like he enjoyed, and his sarcasm is kind of elite. So I'll give it to coach. But CD's really funny, and I don't think she's even trying to be. So she's more of a natural, I'd say.
Coach is very, very elite with his sarcasm. I would 1000% agree with that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go back to Connecticut Sun and your role as an executive there. This one is something that I've always wanted to ask a GM. Okay, as a GM, how do you balance, especially with your background? You're not someone that knows basketball, or as the kids say, no ball, right?
Yeah.
But there's analytics involved, right? Mm-hmm. So how do you balance that? How do you balance like a gut instinct of knowing basketball for years and playing it at the highest level to kind of what maybe the analytics department is telling you?
Yeah, I think it's all about balance, and I think to me, analytics is like a tool, right? It's a tool that has a lot of uses, and whether that's around, which we use, especially like in season, like load management and how players are feeling, and, injury prevention, things like that, which I'm always very, sensitive to, because I had so many injuries, and I'm like, all right, maybe I should have, if there was some analytics I could have used at some point. But I think when we're looking at like player evaluation and things like that, it's like you just find the balance, right? Like I think you have to trust the eye test and kind of the gut instinct at times, but we also very aware that can be biased, right? Like we all have biases in different ways. So I think when you have a group of people that you can kind of check the bias, but sometimes the analytics can tell the story too. So we have a really good analytics guy that, is very good at taking the analytics and first explaining them to me as like I'm a fifth grader, so that like I can really understand it and get it, because it can get a little techie, which is not my strength. But I think he's very good at giving it to me in a way that I understand it, that our coaches understand it, and how to use it, right? And kind of say like, okay, here's this number, here's it compared to maybe other metrics, or how do we want to value it, right? So some of it is up to us, right? And what we find important and what we value the most. But I think the analytics sometimes are very good at being like little differentiators, right? If we're looking at two really similar players, it's like, how do we find the middle ground? And I think analytics helps do that in a way that's very unbiased, which I appreciate, because I think it keeps us more honest in the process versus sometimes eye test it can have some influence based off maybe how someone looks, or someone that maybe is a little more unorthodox in the way that they play versus what we think a three or a wing should be doing, right? So I think the analytics has been very helpful for us in staying true to it. And then, also looking at how do we be creative, right? How do we use analytics in some different ways? So I feel like it's an area that I'm always trying to learn, and that our group is always trying to figure out how do we use it more effectively.
Okay. That's a great answer. What's the biggest difference in how players are developed now compared to when you entered the league?
I think it's more of a focus area, honestly, of like individual development. There's always still that pull of like, okay, what's best for the team and like the team system. But I was like, even when I came to the league, we didn't have player development coaches on the staffs. It was you had your assistant coaches. Where now teams at least have one up to 3 or 4 player development coaches that are specific there for player development, and it's a little bit more individualized where players have certain coaches or they have, where it's not optional. They have to come in and work on player development where I think when I came in, that just really wasn't a thing. You worked with your coach, you kind of got your extra shots up, and then some people would have someone outside of the staff. So I think as the league is growing and investment is going to increase, that obviously we want our players to be super good and work on their skill set. So I think teams are putting more of that emphasis from the team side of like, hey, you don't have to go find your own trainer. We'll get people in place. We'll keep you in market. We'll help work with you. We'll give you the tools that you need. Where I think it's just more of an investment from the teams to help players develop in a way that I think before it just didn't happen in that
Sure.
way. It was just more of like, hey, kind of here's what you get, and then you make it work for yourself.
All right. This is another question around kind of the growth of women's basketball is clearly in a booming stage with visibility, attendance, cultural relevance. But from your seat in the front office, what do you think the next step is to unlock, not just sustain the momentum, but unlock and truly capitalize on that momentum and turn it into lasting exponential growth, kind of like the way UConn has essentially from the early 90s now to 2025?
Yeah, I think one of the first things I always think of is the coverage, right? Like media coverage, because I think when I was or even before I got to UConn, right, I watched a lot of basketball and watched a lot of women's basketball, but there was usually like certain teams on TV that you could turn the channel and watch, right? Like a UConn, a Tennessee, every
Mm-hmm.
now and then like a Duke, right? Like or Baylor, right? There's the elite teams are the only ones that are on TV. Or even I thought about when I was at school, we played on ESPN and national TV a lot when I was in
Mm-hmm.
college, and that wasn't as common for a lot of others. My sister played at University of Illinois. She was never on TV, right? They were terrible. I can say that because they were very terrible as a sister. But right, so it was really easy for people to watch my games versus hers, just because we got the coverage. And I think even if it wasn't where social media is now, I think we realized we got a ton of coverage at UConn. I think that's why a lot of UConn players are great with media, right? They've been doing media since they were a freshman in college. And so I think for women's sports, the more that it's accessible, that people can easily watch it, you don't have to like put together a puzzle to figure out where the game is being streamed. I think that's going to help the growth because, I think that's probably with the NBA, right? Like you can turn on any channel and you can just watch a game, or you see a classic game from the 80s that's on TV,
Sure.
right? Or on social. So I think social's played a really big piece where now you get at all times, you're getting some content about women's basketball or women's sports. And I think that's what's making it grow. People are first because, right, we obviously have like us that are like sports fans, right? Like basketball, like we're fans of the game. But there's a lot of people that they don't care about the game. They're fans of the people, of the players, of
Sure.
the athletes. So I think the more that there's coverage around obviously the games, who the players are, their stories, I think that's what allows people to become fans of them. And I think that's how you sustain it, right? If they're only a fan of a certain person or a certain aspect, okay, when they're gone, then the fan is gone. Versus if you can bring them in and kind of capture them as a fan of the game, I think that's what will help it, kind of maintain over time. And then I think obviously as we're seeing expansion, right? Like it's making it more accessible, but it's also bringing it in more places. There's more opportunity. Now there's going to be more players that are playing or having that opportunity. So I think those kind of things are going to help it sustain itself. And I think that's why you're seeing it arise with all women's sports, not even just
Mm-hmm.
basketball, is it's just becoming a more accessible product. And when that happens, I think people get to understand of how good of a product is. And even if it's a little bit different, like it's still really entertaining. It's still something that you can, find that connection point to. So I think the more media coverage, the more that we get to see it on TV, obviously with our new CBA coming up, right? Like with the media rights, it's a whole lot going on, but I think it's all really good because, it's bringing so much attention and conversation around our game that just didn't happen before. So I think those are all really good signs to me that it's heading in a direction that will be sustainable.
Hope you enjoyed part one of my interview with Morgan Tuck, the GM of the Connecticut Sun and the 4-time national champion with the UConn Huskies. Part 2, a little better, talking about Geno, CD, get to know Morgan a little bit. It's a great interview. Loved her presence. I think she's going to be a phenomenal success in the WNBA, and she already is. And more talking towards the front office piece. So looking forward to what you guys think about part 2. See you next time.
Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it. Yeah. UConn, baby. Home of the champions. Let's go.